Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of Disruption Is Now, where we talk about how AI is disrupting our economy, our culture, and our society. I'm Greg Matusky. I'm the host of the podcast. I'm also CEO of Gregory FCA, and we're going back into wealth management today because that is a real interest of myself. It's an interest of Gregory FCA, and we're very honored to have with us here today Spenser Segal, and he's CEO of ActiFi, and that company has a long history in automating the wealth management practice, a legacy that goes back quite a bit now, and he's a well-known thought leader in the space. Spenser, thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Now, I understand you just completed a book or just published a new book on this very topic. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'm in the middle of writing it, and I'm publishing little excerpts on LinkedIn. So I've got a somewhat unique process that I'm following to get the book to fruition.
Gotcha. And I read a couple of the excerpts this morning. So you had given, I think, 4 or 5 stages in your evolution and how technology had disrupted financial planning and wealth management. I found that interesting. Let's go over those 4 phases that you've seen over your career.
Well, yeah, originally back in the early days, there was very little, the technology was all in the wirehouses and the large firms. And then there was the second stage as you started to get more, advisor-centric solutions that smaller firms could get. Then you got these more integrated platforms, and then eventually towards the AI-enabled capabilities within these more integrated platforms.
So tell me about that, where we are now, and how dramatic of a sea change has that been, do you think, with the advent of AI after all that we've seen in software development?
Yeah, I think AI is having a limited impact this very moment on the wealth management industry, and will have an increasingly large impact over time. Like most of the firms that are just dipping their toes into it, using note-taking apps, for example, and using ChatGPT to do some research or to help them write, or Grammarly or that sort of thing. But I do think much more disruptive capabilities are on the horizon, are being worked on, and are currently available, but underutilized and not really mainstream yet.
It's interesting. I was at Money 2020. I guess that was 2 weeks ago in Vegas, and I interviewed a lot of people. I had the great honor of actually being one of their featured podcasts in their what they called their honeypot. And I spoke with individuals, not from necessarily the wealth management sector, but these were CIOs I interviewed an individual from GoDaddy and then from Experian. And both of them said we're maybe 10% into the deployment phase, that most companies are still really with the evaluation and investigative stage, and kind of responding to pressure to say they have something going in AI, but GoDaddy very much does, and Experian very much does. That seems to echo what you're saying, maybe even less so in wealth management. Yes, no?
Yeah, absolutely. I think even less so in wealth management. Like I said, firms are proceeding cautiously.
And is that because of the lens of compliance? Where do we fall there? Is that always going to be a throttle or governor on acceptance rates, do you think?
Yes and no. I think that firms that are really comfortable being uncomfortable are starting to push the boundaries, and they're not letting that hold them back. And I think for the firms that are comfortable being comfortable, they're using that as an excuse.
Well, let me ask you one thing. I did hear this over and over again recently, and that is because of the black box nature of AI, that we really don't know what weights that it's using to make a decision, that it'll never be fully compliant unless we figure out a new way to do this, because we'll never know exactly where the decision making came from. And that opens individuals and organizations to liability. What do you think of that? Where do you fall on that? Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, no, I've thought long and hard about it. So I think, expert systems are a form of AI. So in expert systems, that's not an issue whatsoever, right? It's if then else logic. You're applying, very specific rules. The rules can be audited. The rules can be described. You don't have any of those issues whatsoever in using an expert system. As you get to more generative type AI, machine learning, that sort of thing, it is more of an issue. And that's where you need to, I just wrote an excerpt more recently saying the difference between these general purpose LLMs, like that Meta, OpenAI, Google, those models, I liken them as a sort of general practitioner, using a doctor analogy. Now, if you require neurosurgery and have a significant issue with your brain, are you going to trust a general practitioner that has zero experience doing complex neurosurgery? They're a doctor. They know lots of things. They understand the problem. They can explain the problem. But you're gonna go to a highly trained neurosurgeon, and I think there's going to be a acceleration of these proprietary AI models that are very fine tuned to the specific domain of wealth management, and even more tuned to very specific philosophies on wealth management. I mean, not every firm does things the same way. Some firms have a more passive, zero alpha type strategy. Some are more active management. Some believe the role of insurance should be very prominent in wealth management. Some firms believe that, hey, insurance is important, but a cost to be managed, and want to do, so there are different models, and they need the generation and the evolution of these proprietary AI models that are very secure, that are very private, that are really trained on a very non-public data set, is going to be really important. And that's where I think things are going to really take off.
So drill down on that. There's so much to unpack that you just gave us that we could just have a show about that. But you think it's going to be these very specific applications that are private to the organization, or and tuned specifically to wealth management, so that you can put in your philosophy, your strategy, your belief system as a firm, and it's reflected in that app. Do I have that right, or am I missing it?
Yes, or trained on data that aligns to your particular philosophy. So these models are only as good as the information that they're trained on and tuned on. And so there will be multiple winners that form, and you can either build it yourself, or you can partner with a firm that is aligned to your philosophy.
So I've always been told that training is a very involved and expensive process, which is why most of these LLMs, the generalized ones, lag in their knowledge level, because you can't train these every day. You're not training them in a real-time basis. You have to update the model, right?
Yep.
So how expensive would it be for a significant player to create their own model, or will there be certain flavors out there that you'll white label almost, and then put the finishing touches of customization on it?
Exactly. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. The Morgan Stanleys of the world, the Ameriprises of the world will build it themselves. They'll spend tens of millions of dollars on developing one that's totally proprietary for just their advisors. And then there'll be an emergence of firms that are white labeling these, that do spend that money, but that are more pre-baked and pre-trained on the particular philosophy. And that's where I think those are your choices. Joe, a practice that's doing $1 million in revenue is not going to be able to tackle this problem by themselves. There's just no way.
Let me give you a counter argument real fast. I was listening to a podcast with Mark Andreessen, the great VC, and he was talking about financial services. And he said, really, the killer app in the Excel of financial services, if you will, is going to be that app which will allow anybody to self-optimize their portfolio on a real-time basis. He said, if we get there with autonomous agents loaded into your app, that could be the real threat to financial services. Can you comment on that and on the negative or positive and where you fall?
Yeah, I don't agree. I mean, I potentially agree with that. If it's purely portfolio and you don't really understand the client's goals, you don't understand the values, you don't understand their entire income statement, balance sheet, you just say, hey, my risk tolerance is this, and to spit out a portfolio. I think that is true. But I think I'm very bullish on the advisory business. And I think what's going to happen is these AIs are going to, both the agentic AIs as well as the generative AIs are going to enable advisors to spend more time with their clients on the high human value added activities. Hey, I don't want to screw up my grandkids. I've had a lot of success as an entrepreneur. Part of my success was due to the struggles that I had early in my life and career. And now I've amassed this fortune. I don't want to mess up my grandchildren who haven't had that experience. I want to give them an opportunity. Well, the portfolio optimization isn't going to have anything to do with those types of conversations. And that's where I do think that that's where there's a real bright future for advisors to have those kinds of dialogues with their wealthier clients or any client.
And I want to come back to that, but first, because some of our viewers are not such technical experts as yourself, explain the difference between agentic AI and generative.
All right, so generative is creating text and content and so forth, versus agentic AI is trained to use tools. So, for example, you could have an agent that preps for a client meeting that uses existing software. I want to use Orion for this and Redtail for that and Juncture for this, and be able to pull together a client meeting preparation package that I used to pay, a paraplanner to just, click a bunch of buttons and, from this, put the data from this system to that system to so forth. That can be, you can outsource that work to an AI agent that will do that client prep package, if you will, so that you can, the human can really focus on, well, how should I message this? How should I present this information, and really think about that type stuff.
And I want to get to that human in the loop. But first, I just want you to help me understand that ecosystem of assistance, right? And what that means and where it's playing in the orbit of the planner, as far as tax planning and estate planning and legal issues and portfolio management. Like, what would you see to be the perfect universe that's out there that maybe we're not there yet, but the Starship Enterprise might approach in the next few months, years, what have you?
So you're talking about the type of ecosystem the modern advisor would leverage?
Exactly.
Okay. So, obviously CRM is a core part of that platform. You've got things like document management, things like tax management, financial planning, portfolio management, trading, all of, reporting, all of those sorts of things. We actually have a whole diagram on what is the advisor ecosystem, and more importantly, there's certainly debate between the all-in-one solutions that kind of have almost most or all of those components, and then more the best in breed solutions. And I think what agentic AI will allow and enable, especially where you have a data lake, or a central source of truth in terms of the data piece. And that's an important consideration for firms thinking about getting their data straight and normalizing it into a more central repository. They'll be able to leverage these best-in-class point solutions in a way that creates the same kind of outcome that a fully integrated stack creates. So again, some advisors will go one direction, some advisors will go the other, but I think the gap between those two will narrow.
So where does the advisor now sit? Let's go to that relationship component that you were nibbling at a little bit earlier, and their role in this, and the entrepreneur who's concerned about their grandchildren after he or she has spent their lifetime creating wealth. So that relationship rests where in all of this?
That relationship is central. I think people will pay money for great advice. And again, what's priceless in the advisor relationship is when the non-financial spouse, who would be very intimidated by dealing with all these money issues, that the financial spouse says to them, hey, if anything happens to me, just call Greg. Greg knows where all the bodies are buried, and he will look out for your well-being. You've been in meetings. He understands our goals. He understands our values. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. And especially, the financial spouse passing away is a very traumatic experience for the non-financial spouse. The last thing that the financial spouse would want to have happen is to create massive amount of stress for their partner.
Now, let's enter another realm, which I struggle with myself. I don't know if you know much about my public relations firm, but we are very early adopters of generative AI. Back in 2020, we first saw, ChatGPT 2. We built a platform on it. We called it Glad Right, after Malcolm Gladwell. And then when ChatGPT was introduced in November of 2022, I got that date right, and the world changed. It was a remarkable day in my career, because I have spent my life creating content. And when I finally realized that I could help other people do it more efficiently than what it had taken me, it took me years to learn how to effectively create a story, a message, and what have you. It was just a joyous day for me. And we've gotten to the point where we've built a lot of pretty sophisticated tools. I mean, one of our crisis communications tools allows the quarterback, imagine analogizing to wealth management, someone in corporate communications who has to manage a crisis communications program. It enables them to go right to the heart of it, right? Most crisis communications manuals are textbooks. They don't allow you to respond immediately. You got to go to page 275 to find out what a cyber hack, how you would deal with a cyber hack. Well, you would just put cyber hack. It would tell you, it would immediately begin to give you the crisis committee and everything like that. So it's a pretty sophisticated app that we have, and it cuts down tremendously on the back and forth. But what my struggle is, Spenser, is change management. The old cliches that I say all the time: always turn to AI first, right? If you're struggling with something, you have a client call, it's going to be a difficult call. Put the nature of the call into ChatGPT, right? And see what advice it can give you. If 8 of them are obvious, but 2 of them you've never thought of, you see real value from that. But still, getting people to change their behavior for any number of reasons. One reason, ironically, in my business, the content creators believe it's cheating not to do everything themselves and originally, which is a kind of a twisted view of the world when everyone uses tools. So have you thought about the change management process and how you can move clients from investigating, considering it, to implementing it and actually seeing productivity and scaling benefits from it?
Yeah, I think that's one of the central challenges. And the approach that I tend to recommend is to work with the willing in the firm. So there, within a particular firm, let's say you've got a dozen employees in your firm, there will be varying degrees of readiness. And let me define readiness. Readiness is defined as motivation plus skill plus capacity. So some people will be highly motivated to experiment. Some people will not. And so you start with the willing, and then you share success stories where the willing and the people that have the skill and appetite to do it start to have wins, and then they influence their peers. They're like, wow, this person is doing this so much more effectively than I am. I want to learn more. So that's my preferred approach.
I really want to emphasize that, Spenser, because that's my experience too. And this is really important. It is, you need to create, we call it a coalition of the willing. So it's surprising that our terminology is even that close. But when we began, I was the biggest advocate, right? I was the evangelist in the firm. And part of that was my own self-interest. I wanted to see productivity gains. But part of it was curiosity, right? Like, what are the bounds of this? Like, how far can you push this? Is this really an alien intelligence? Is this some kind of different intelligence? And coming from a creator point of view, I think we have more flexibility than certainly a quant or certainly a coder who was all binary all their lives. And so I did get early disciples around me, right? And they took the message out. And then we created a very positive environment that we celebrated wins. So if someone came up with a chat GPT, a tailored chat GPT, and again, I think you called this approach, what did you call it earlier when you were working with generative? It's just kind of a table stakes kind of thing today.
Yeah.
But it's important because these tailored GPTs can reduce tedious assignments to moments instead of hours. And so we celebrated that. And then we backed it up with constant training. In 1 year, we had 52 AI training classes for our people ad nauseum. And more than training, that was what I call the just do it phenomenon, where Nike just said over and over for billions of dollars worth, just do it, just do it. And finally, they got through to people. And that was the kind of repetition that you needed, right, to make people feel comfortable. And then finally, you had mentioned capacity. And I think this is really important and wise advice from you, is that people have to have time to play, to fail, to succeed in what in generative is a very safe environment. I mean, it's just you and the machine. And when they do that, they come up with some very wondrous and weird results, right? You can come up with really amazing brainstorming. You can come up, again, if you just put a generalized marketing program into ChatGPT, you're going to see 10 ideas that you've seen before. But if you just learn to go at it in different directions and different ways, again, 8 might be common. They'll say, start a podcast, but there might be 1, right? And that's all you need in this world. 1 out of 10. That's a winner idea, and you can build a whole brand upon it. So I think your advice that you need the willing, you need the motivated, you need people. When you say skill, I always replace that with the word curious, right? Because skill, in my experience, comes if you're curious. And finally, the capacity to really understand these technologies and get over the hump so you can start using them productively to free you for the real core value of what you provide clients or customers or those that you serve.
And again, I think there's 3 groups of people, and the percentages vary. in the firm, but there are those that are really eager, have high readiness. There's those that philosophically agree but are cautious. They want to see other people go first, have success, and they'll jump on the bandwagon. And then the third group is just, hey, I've done it this way. I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing. And, those folks probably won't make the leap into the next generation of AI-enabled wealth management.
So I'm going to go way back. Earlier you said what's happening now, but what you see is much more disruptive on the future. Give me some idea. Help me paint a picture of the future of what this will enable somebody who's, as you said, willing, ready, and has the capacity to.
So my personal moonshot is, increasing the percentage of people that have access and receive world-class integrated advice from 0.1 to 20%. I think right now, less than 0.1% of the investors receive world-class integrated advice by my definition. I have a very strict definition, right? And I don't know if you want to elaborate on what that all is, but I do think the things that are going to be really disruptive are enabling advisors, because there's two reasons why advisors don't deliver world-class integrated advice. One is and there's more than two reasons, but the two top reasons are, one is they don't have the deep multidisciplinary expertise across all aspects of a client's life. They're not maybe insurance experts. They're not estate planning experts. They're not tax experts. They're not, whatever they are. And they're expert in one or two of those areas. They may be knowledgeable in a few areas, and then some areas are just uncomfortable giving advice on. And all those areas act in combination or acting in coordination will deliver much greater value to the consumer, right? The second reason is the economics of doing that, right? The people that are generally getting that kind of high quality, fully integrated advice across their entire financial lives tend to be the multifamily office clients that are paying tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in advice fees, and being able to scale that to a consumer that's paying $2,000 or $3,000 is very difficult.
Right. Interesting. So give me some. Well, let me go back here and talk a little bit about ActiFi. You've given such good insights here. I want to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about more about ActiFi and the role that it's playing in moving this forward with your clients and the type of clients you work with. You don't have to give names, but really, where are you showing value?
Well, right now, ActiFi is focused on the firm to advisor relationship, really driving advisor engagement, organic growth, platform utilization, advisor retention, and ultimately yielding enterprise value. So we're focused on that part of it. We're more in a consultative role on the advisor to client relationship. So that is an area that we're really moving into. But right now, our bread and butter is helping larger wealth management firms more deeply engage their advisors to deliver an enhanced client experience that results in happier clients and higher revenue growth for the firm.
Well, I'm sure you're doing it successfully because I've heard a lot about you over your career, but also just the clarity you gave here today, I think shows that you can look at this in 360 degrees for a client, from both the human and the relationship side, but also the technology side, and what those platforms will be that will deliver real scalability and productivity to the firm. So I want to thank you for being with us today. It was a great conversation, and tune in the future, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, my pleasure. It was exciting to be on with you.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.